Well, certainly the evolution of shale exploration in the United States has created an abundant form of gas available to the rest of the world that all of a sudden made that fuel very inexpensive and available. Obviously through the option of LNG, but still even within the US. What that has caused is all of a sudden the thinking about fossil fuels playing a role in reducing carbon emissions globally took a very big step in the United States, for instance, as inexpensive gas displaced a lot of coal and was chosen for meeting a lot of the growth. And as a result, interestingly enough, even though the United States did not sign the Kyoto Protocol, they were the only nation that achieved the Kyoto Protocol targets as a result of that. So you've seen the shale evolution, you've seen a shift of nations from coal and oil to natural gas, which is 40 to 50% of the emissions of CO2 from those other fuels. And so as a result, we've seen an advent of gas around the world, natural gas around the world, which has prompted, obviously, the need for LNG markets and for LNG transport so that those gas demands can be met. New pipelines, and interesting also is that with a growing interest in renewables such as wind and solar, gas is a very efficient manner of doing the gaps and solving the intermittent issue of energy production as the sun doesn't shine all the time or the wind doesn't blow all the time, and still batteries in its infancy or other forms of energy storage. Natural gas produces a very reliable way of meeting those needs and covering those gaps. Sempra has a number of different companies. I will comment only on one of those, Sempra LNG and Midstream. We have a big group on Sempra Renewables, Yanova in Mexico, which is the largest energy company, private energy company in Mexico. Very active, very growing, and then our utility business in the United States, Chile, and Peru. But on LNG and Midstream, we are focused on developing infrastructure in the US for the transport of natural gas, supporting not only liquefaction, but industrial customers and other load, but also in the growing of liquefaction facilities. So we have Cameron LNG, which is 3 trains currently under construction, will come in service throughout 2018 and 2019. We have an expansion of Cameron for 2 more trains already permitted, both at FERC and DOE, FTA and non-FTA. And we are working with Woodside on a project in Texas called the Port Arthur LNG that we are currently marketing. And also we're working with Pemex, the national oil company in Mexico, on developing liquefaction facilities at our existing regas terminal called Costa Azul, just north of Ensenada. Also working on different pipelines to promote the export of natural gas to Mexico as they keep growing their infrastructure related to what we talked about before, again, to meet growing energy needs in a more efficient and cleaner manner. Well, I think what you're going to continue to have is an evolution of the model for LNG exports. The long-term customers are still utilities that need reliability, safety, security of supply, and the United States has the challenge of marrying a pipeline-regulated industry, which has rules about how gas moves and how it's nominated and what options you have, with LNG facilities, which are intermittent in their output. Ships come every 2-3 days, so it's not a continuous output. And you have to marry this continuity with this intermittency. And that's a challenge, technically and commercial, that I think the next projects are the ones that can solve those challenges in a way that the customer feels comfortable signing the 20-year arrangements to go forward. LNG, United States has lots of natural gas at a very low cost. I think it's a very stable source of LNG. Clearly not the only one. Countries and nations will look for some geographic diversity of supply for political and security reasons, but a lot of the bulk of LNG to the world will come from the US. As a matter of fact, it's kind of accepted that the growing demand for LNG will not be met unless there's some additional LNG from the US to come to the market. Well, I think the natural gas, I don't differentiate between natural gas and LNG. It's just forms of natural gas. I think the challenges that we as an industry have is to really focus on how we can really promote the notion and the fact that natural gas can be the most effective way to reduce carbon emissions. If we're really serious about reducing carbon emissions, and then the best and most efficient and fastest way is to replace coal and oil with natural gas, to make inroads into the transportation sector with natural gas where it can, like bunkering and things of that nature. And that's something that is going to be the big opportunity. Developing these markets, there's 1.3 billion people in the world that don't have access to energy, electricity. We need to find ways for them to do it, lift it out of poverty. Natural gas does that very efficiently, very effectively, and very quickly, and without and when it comes to emissions, in a very good manner to minimize the impact. You marry that with renewables, and all of a sudden you have sustainable forms of energy that are environmentally responsible, they're cost effective, and they provide the opportunity to lift people out of poverty. I think those are the challenges and the opportunities for natural gas as a whole, and LNG in particular, to bring natural gas to those countries through which pipeline is not accessible. Gastech, like any of those major events, is an opportunity to bring all the parties together. It saves on a lot of airfares of us having meetings and seeing friends and colleagues and sharing views, and that's the important thing, is we don't always agree on our view of the future, and that's a good thing, because if we all agreed, we're either all right or all wrong. So this is a good way to kind of take the pulse of where the industry players are, what they think, what their processes are, and then we make our own decisions as to where we think we can fit best from a business perspective. And so there's always great advantage in this type of events, and Gastech is no different.